The following program discusses sensitive issues related to sexuality. Parents are cautioned this presentation may be too candid for younger audiences.
Welcome to Intimate Clarity. I'm Jason Bradley, and I'm here with Jennifer Jill Schwarzer. Now, she is a licensed professional counselor, and today we're going to talk about a sensitive topic, but it's a conversation we need to have.
That's right.
Jen, in case of extreme problems in a marriage, do you think that separation can be a good thing?
Personally, I do. I want to give deference to other schools of thought. There are marriage counselors, Christian marriage counselors that say that separation is a step toward divorce and we want to preserve marriages. And so, that's true. It's a fact. But I think that sometimes a separation can save a marriage. But before I go into that, let me talk about how God feels about his marriage to his people. God said about marriage, what God has joined together, let no man separate. Mark 10, verse 9. And we're told in Malachi 2:16 that God hates divorce. But even though God hates divorce, I'm not convinced that he hates separation, because he himself separated from his people. Often his people would descend into idolatry, and he would say things like what he said in Isaiah 54:7, for a brief moment I abandoned you, but with deep compassion I will bring you back. The people would descend into idolatry, but the absence of God's presence or God's Spirit would give them that wake-up call that they needed to come to their senses. They would repent of their sins, and then they would be reunited with God. And so sometimes our presence gives the message that what you're doing is okay, even when it's not okay.
So kind of like you become an enabler type of thing, or it ends up being like a codependent situation in some cases.
That's right, and it can very quickly become very dysfunctional, where even the person, say it's an abuse situation, even the person being abused can, in an unconscious way, contribute to the abuse cycle by enabling, by being codependent. And so sometimes they need the separation in order to kind of break that feedback loop, that continuum in their own mind, so that they can get kind of a reset and come back, with, a better attitude and with more clarity and better boundaries in that relationship.
I love that you used more clarity.
Yeah, because that's the name of our program.
That's right, Intimate Clarity, that's right.
So the problems in a marriage may not be sufficient to justify divorce, but it might be that there needs to be a wake-up call, like I said. So let me give you some examples of that. Of course, any type of physical abuse, and some people, and I respect them, believe that physical abuse is grounds for divorce, and I can see where they're coming from on that. But I can't seem to get around the words of Jesus, where the only grounds he gave were adultery. And I have seen marriages in which there was physical abuse recover from it. So I'm not saying you have to stay in a marriage where there's physical abuse. Not saying that. It's your choice, your decision.
Yeah, see, for me, I would think that it would be in terms of, I would think that it would be grounds. And the reason why I would think that is because, you don't want to stay in a situation where somebody could beat you to death or kill you or whatever the case may be.
That's right. Well, kind of the prevailing wisdom in Christian circles is that the three criterion for divorce are the three A's: adultery, abandonment, and abuse. And I respect that thinking. However, I think often it may be worth it to try separation first, because sometimes separation can salvage the relationship. So if there's physical abuse, financial abuse, emotional abuse, you need to get away from that situation because you're going to get hurt. And what you're doing by staying in that situation is you're actually giving the abuser an opportunity to hurt you. And by giving them that opportunity, you're actually, in a sense, indirectly contributing to their sin problem. So you want to remove yourself from that situation if there's any kind of abuse going on. And like I said, that can sometimes create an environment in the relationship even though you're withdrawn from the relationship, where they can start to come to their senses. It can kind of give God a direct shot at them. Sometimes in a relationship, we actually block the access of the Holy Spirit to that person. And if we remove ourselves, then God will be able to get a direct shot at them. You can do that in less extreme ways than physically separating, moving out of the home, by simply emotionally withdrawing, for instance, from an argument. But if it gets to the point where you know you're in a dangerous situation and you're losing your own bearings and you're putting yourself in harm's way, and through prayer and counsel you come to the point where you need to separate, and you know you need to separate, it can save a marriage, but I think it needs to be done in a way that I call structured separation.
Unpack that. What is structured separation?
Okay, structured separation is not just, I'm leaving, I'm so mad at you, I can't stand you, I'm not staying here anymore. Structured separation is more deliberative than that. It's more intentional than that. So what the individual that is seeking a structured separation does is usually they write a letter to their spouse. And in the letter, they begin with love and commitment. They say, I love you. I am committed to this relationship. I am not seeking another relationship. I'm not looking to end this relationship and seek another. I'm committed. I'm here. I want you and me, but I want you and me in a better form than we currently have. We're better than this, is basically what you're saying. And then you very carefully identify the problem. This is what's going on that I cannot accept, that I cannot tolerate. And you talk about the effects of the problem, how it's affecting you, how it's affecting them, how it's affecting children if there are children involved. And then you very clearly state your requirements for returning to that relationship or to a live-in situation in that relationship. Sometimes it's simply, we need to go to counseling. That's all I'm asking is counseling. Sometimes it's, you need to get counseling, and you need to get past your sexual addiction, or you need to get to the place where you've gotten to the bottom of why you get physically or verbally violent. You need to get to the bottom of that, and you need to give me evidence that you have gotten better, and there need to be other people in your life, professionals that are impartial people, telling me that now it's safe to live with you again. And so it really depends on the situation, what your criterion for reuniting happens to be. But you know, a wise woman told me once that, and I'm gonna be a little bit stereotypical here, in an abuse situation, it's not always the man, believe me, it's not always the man abusing the wife, but it often is. And often the wife will be telling the husband that she's unhappy and that this is terrible, and she'll be laboring with him verbally, and he won't hear a thing she says, and nothing she says seems to impact him. But once she moves away, suddenly he hears thunder. That's right. And this woman told me, you know, men often don't hear what women say, they hear what they do. So sometimes the only thing that will speak to that person is, I'm leaving.
It goes back to that saying, actions speak louder than words. Let me ask you this question. So how do you end that letter?
Yeah, good question. You have to close the letter with hope and faith and that basic message that we're better than this. In Jesus, we can get through this. We can experience change. This doesn't have to keep going this way. I will not live in this situation if it's going to be this way, but I believe it can be different.
So it's kind of like a criticism sandwich, right?
It's
so you start
totally an affirmation
sandwich. With the good, then you introduce the issues like that need to be addressed, and then you end with and you establish the fact that you want to work this out.
Exactly.
You want to be there and work it out.
It's just like Revelation 3 and Jesus talking to his bride, the church, and he generally, as he speaks to each church, which represents an era of Christianity, he'll say, this is what I'm happy with, this is what I'm not happy with, and this is what I want you to do. And then he'll say something that generally that engenders faith and hope that things can change. So yeah, it's a very, very good model. It's a good model to follow in any relationship, in friendships, in parent-child relationships. When you have something negative to bring to that person, to affirm what's right in the relationship, and then issue the criticism, and then follow it up with what's right and what's good, and the hope that you have in that relationship recovery. And we call it an affirmation sandwich in our family. And the reality is that the criticism to affirmation ratio in relationships needs to be, it used to be 6-to-1. The experts would say, now they're saying 20-to-1. So we need to do a lot more affirming and a lot less criticizing. However, and this is a very important sort of disclaimer, marriage counselors working with couples will say that there's a set of rules that apply, but really kind of all bets are off. Everything changes when you're dealing with an abuse situation.
Okay.
For instance, in counseling couples, I will often try, if an individual comes to me and says they're having trouble with their marriage, I'll try to get the spouse into the counseling office so that we can work together to try to resolve that. But if there's abuse going on, I won't do that until the individual perpetrating the abuse has received counseling and has come to the point of change in themselves. And then I'll try to bring that couple together, because what will happen is all the empathies that would normally work in a relationship on the part of the victim will be exploited by the abuser. Yeah. So,
and then if you make that reintroduction too soon, you're just entering them back into a hostile situation.
That's exactly right. And that's, to come right down to it, that is the purpose of separation, is to try to salvage the relationship, do everything you can to salvage the relationship, which sometimes means temporarily getting away from the relationship and giving that person an opportunity to really think about what they're doing.
Yes.
And really reckon with God over what they're doing and come to their senses.
Kind of like a self-reflection type of moment.
And I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, and one of the most prominent figures in Seventh-day Adventism is a lady named Ellen White. And she wrote volumes and volumes about marriage and really affirmed marriage in a powerful way, and was very biblical in her view of marriage and divorce, by the way. But she actually separated from her husband for a period of time, and that's kind of a well-kept secret. But I have letters that she wrote to her husband while they were separated, and they followed this formula of Affirmation Sandwich, as we're calling it, perfectly.
Really?
She basically, I love you, I'm committed to you, I'll do anything for this relationship, but these things are happening and I can't be with you right now. When these things resolve, when you come to your senses, then we can reunite. Yeah, she was very, very strong.
I didn't realize that.
I have never read anything that so perfectly really manifested the love of God and the way he deals with an abusive situation as I read in her letters to her husband. And apparently what happened, and it's a sad situation, apparently what happened was he had several strokes, and the strokes affected his behavior, and he became jealous, possessive, and really emotionally abusive to her. And for her own sanity, she separated from that situation. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like it was a good move on her part. They ended up getting back together.
Yeah.
And it was a strong relationship from
that point forward. I believe that separation can save a marriage. I believe it can, done right and done led by God's Spirit. And I would just caution people, don't do it haphazardly. Seek out counselors. There's safety in a multitude of counselors. So if you have a handful of people, pastor maybe, or an elder at the church, friends that are, wise people that have capabilities of working through difficult problems like this, gather those people around you, tell them what you're considering, ask for their input, and pray. Then pray. Take those things to God, because people can give bad counsel. And take those things to God and really pray and fast over it, and do it with God's leading, God's guidance, and in God's Spirit. And sometimes it can save a marriage. Personally believe. Now I know there's people that would question that, but this is where I've landed as a marriage counselor and as a human being.
Yeah, and that's, if you can preserve the marriage, ultimately that's what we need to do, is preserve the marriage.
That's what we wanted. That's the end game.
Absolutely.
Even if it's inconvenient, and that's a lot of the reason people don't separate, because it's so inconvenient. It's just easier to stay there.
What's really inconvenient is the fact that our time is up.
It's true.
Oh, well, there's just not enough time. Make sure you tune in next time. But if you would like more resources, go to intimateclarity.tv and check out the website. We'll see you next time. God bless.